Thanks so much for joining us today for another episode of the Digital Dialogue Podcast brought to you by Virtual Vision. I'm Amanda Stichter, Chief of Operations at Virtual Vision, and I am excited to be your host today as we dive deeper into the topic of KPIs and business systems. Yeah. Our
KPIs
digital
rock,
dialogue.
dude.
What?
I said KPIs rock, dude.
KPIs rock. You heard it
Yeah,
from him first.
that's right.
The Digital Dialogue Podcast was designed to facilitate casual but valuable conversation with some of the restoration industry's top experts. And today, you guys, I am joined by the cream of the crop and a very familiar face for anyone who's probably been in the industry for a while, Mr. Anthony Nelson. So, aloha, Anthony. Did I say that right? Joining us from sunny Hawaii.
Yeah. You can't screw up aloha.
Because it's both hello and goodbye.
And it's really easy to say.
Well, Anthony, why don't you just start by introducing yourself to our listeners?
Sure. So Anthony Nelson. I am a partner in Pivot My Business with John Kowalski. And then in addition to that, I helped Ed Cross just as a little bit of a pet project, stand up, customize exact make price lists with Restoration Crosscheck.
Amazing.
And then on top of that, on the consensus body for the IICRC S760, the wildfire standard, which is in its, I think we're going into second round of peer review. So it's getting real interesting and fun. And then board member for the Restoration Industry Association. And then here locally, big fan of our local construction industry, the construction industry of Maui. And I'm the scholarship chair. So I make sure that we raise tens of thousands of dollars so Maui kids can go and get an education in construction and come back and make our world a better place here in the middle of the Pacific.
How cool. That's really neat. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah,
Basically,
I'm a character. You gotta keep tabs on me. I run around quite a bit.
is there anything you don't do that we should know about?
Oh, absolutely. I don't do payroll.
Oh, good.
I cannot handle it.
Not a numbers person?
Definitely a numbers
In that
person,
regard.
but not a monotonous numbers entry person.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Data entry can be quite excruciating, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously, you have quite the role in the industry, and I know you have quite the history as well. Can you just give us, you could just kind of told us what you do in the industry, but tell us about your history and your story.
So if you wind the clock back to fall of 2000, I was spraying lawns in Michigan, lawn fertilization, and I was like any other 18-year-old who got out of high school and was trying to pay his way through community college, and I needed a job. Kind of didn't care what it was, right? Just needed to make decent money. Wasn't afraid of hard work, and walked into Coach's Catastrophe Cleaning and Restoration Services in Ypsilanti, Michigan. My original intention was, hey, seems like a great winter gig. I'll show up, grind out the winter with these guys and then go back to spraying lawns in the summer because I just like the autonomy of being a dude in a truck and driving around. I don't know, that after high school, that sense of liberty was super important to me at that time in my life. High school
Which
felt
is a
like
pretty
a cage.
big thing in the Midwest in general, I think.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And ended up falling in love with the industry. And I've always had a high level of altruism, and for whatever the reason, my mom either raised me right or wrong. I can't figure that out, but I just have this drive to make the world a better place and make a difference in the world. And I found property restoration was a great place to do that. And I didn't have to go back to school to do it. That was the other thing. Like I could do it now, today. And that was exciting for me. Spent 7 or 8 years with Coaches. Worked my way up from a technician to, a leader in the industry, in their mitigation department. And then when they decided to open their Lansing location at 25 years old, Tim Fagan was like, hey, do you want to go open this branch location? You should interview for it. And I'm like, no freaking way this guy's going to hire me. No way. I had gauged ears and a ponytail. Like I was a
Oh,
metal guy through and through, like hardcore, like Dickies metal, like yeah, went to shows every weekend. And here's this guy that's like, no, you can do this. And I'm like, no way, you're crazy. Interviewed for it, and to this day, I owe Tim Fagan, a huge debt of gratitude for the opportunity he gave me, because that was really when I first started to learn the business of restoration, as opposed to the technical stuff and the job site management and everything.
mm-hmm.
Spent a couple of years building that office, and then in 2009, there were a few things that happened. My father took his own life, which had its own set of challenges that came with it. I
Oh,
just needed to get the hell out of Michigan.
sure. I'm so
And
sorry.
my wife had graduated, and she was pursuing her teaching degree. And 2009, Michigan, couldn't find a job, right? Just couldn't
Mm.
find a decent job. And I had met this guy in Maui who was like, why don't you quit working for coaches and come move to Hawaii, and you can run my business for me. You can help me build this thing. And I was like, no, 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 no. And then, kind of this stack of events happened. And I said, you know what? Now's a great time to make a bad decision. Just recently married, and we could move to Hawaii. And, if we stayed around for a year or two and it didn't shake out, no big deal. We'll just move back. Right. Moved here. First year was pretty rough. Just making friends, right? Kind of,
Mm-hmm.
like you grow up in your tiny little Midwest community and it becomes your everything. And then when you decide to leave that, you have to develop a whole new support system.
Mm-hmm.
And so moved here 2009, started working for two companies. One was Maui Fire and Flood. The other one was Hawaii DKI, that was based in Honolulu. So I got the opportunity to work on both sides, and then committed myself to Maui Fire and Flood in 2010. And that organization was the platform that we grew, that became Premier Restoration in 2016. And when I left Premier last year, we had 4 locations. We were on track to do 30 million in annual revenue, mitigation, reconstruction, asbestos abatement, contents, you name it. We were trying to do it, and we're pretty successful at it.
That's incredible. Would you ever have guessed, as the 18-year-old spraying lawns, that you'd be sitting here today as like one of the top industry like leaders to talk
Here,
about the restoration
like,
industry?
this is sincere when I tell you this. I don't believe you.
Why?
Like, I don't think I'm like a top guy. I just don't. I'm sorry. Like, I don't. I don't think I'm that cool.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's some indication when you show up to one of the expos and you kind of have your own little posse.
I have a posse.
You're pretty
Are
popular.
you a part of my posse?
Oh, if you'll let me be, I will totally join your posse.
I don't discriminate. Like, I'll take all the posse members I can. So you're welcome to join. You're welcome to join.
Fantastic. But I think you're one of the cool kids, so I'm
Well,
honored to
thank you.
get to hang out with you. So,
I will take that with grace for sure.
well, Anthony, today our goal is to dive into the topic of KPIs, and we're titling today's conversation, Your KPIs Say You Suck. Now what? How connecting failing KPIs to improving business systems can lead to staggering increases in profitability. So, start high level with me. Talk to me about KPIs and what is it that makes you passionate about this topic?
Sure. So laying some foundation, KPIs is an acronym that stands for Key Performance Indicator, right? And these are numbers that we use to track the performance of our business, right? Whether that's
Mhm.
time-based metrics, how fast are we getting our estimates out, financial metrics, how profitable are we when we do mitigation projects, down to collections metrics. There's a number of different things that you can measure. And one of the, people, when I show them all the KPIs that we measure at Pivot, I just watch them glaze over, because there's literally 100 KPIs that we measure here at Pivot.
Sure.
But the challenge has always been, like, people have kind of gotten over the hill of like, okay, I understand what a KPI is. I've started to track them, but like when they're failing, what do I do?
Right.
Like, how do I go and fix this absence of performance in my
Mm.
business?
Yeah. I mean, sounds like a really simple question, but it's kind of a loaded one, right? There's a lot that comes into that.
Well,
So,
our businesses are complex, right? It's like,
Mhm.
it's like I make lots of parallels to marriage because I've been married for a long time.
Mhm.
And like marriage is complex. Like there's so
Yeah,
much nuance. And if you came into my house and tried to understand how that relationship functioned without being there all day, you're going
sure.
to get lost. And our businesses are the same way, right? They're just loaded with
Absolutely.
complexity.
So you kind of talked a little bit about, KPI, key performance indicators, what they are. Why are they crucial for businesses, and why are they crucial for a business specifically in the restoration industry?
So this is a great question because if you look at our industry and what attracts individuals to our industry, typically the individuals that show up here have a higher than normal level of EQ, right?
Mm,
They are a little more in touch with their emotions. Maybe they have a higher sense of purpose. And so they tend to run on feeling quite a
mm,
bit. Like, this is what I think needs to happen. Therefore, it's the right decision and I'll go.
yeah.
Quite often, our intuition is correct, right? But if you layer that intuition with KPIs, it starts to validate your intuition or call BS on you when your intuition's running the other way.
Mm,
And so good case in point, right? Like we always have these emotional connections with our employees that we hire, right? Because we're all
mhm,
centered around doing the right thing and making the world a better place.
mhm,
And people can be motivated in that direction, but suck at performing their current task, right? Like how many
mhm.
times have we hired somebody that's like has high levels of customer service, but can't rip out floor or write estimates or, whatever it is fast
Right,
enough for us. And
right.
so by measuring these KPIs, they serve as either validation or a counterbalance to the intuition required as an entrepreneur to run our businesses.
Hmm, absolutely. So, in your experience, what are some of the common KPIs that restoration businesses often track? And what does
Oh
that
man.
tell them then about their business? I know that's kind of a loaded question because there are, like you already said, hundreds of different KPIs that you can look at.
Yeah, it's like, hey, which children of yours is your favorite, right? Like you don't answer that question, right?
No.
Yeah. No, so they fall into buckets for me. There's financial metrics and then there's time-based metrics. And then within those, there's, based on, the function of the business, there's always creative ways to measure it. And then taking time-based metrics and layering them over financial metrics like revenue earned per hour or
Mm,
those types of things really start to give you visualization into the true performance of your business. One of the
sure.
things that we measured at Premier was we had this slide board of revenue produced per hour by technician, right? And it was a smash average of all the projects that they worked on, the hours they put into it, and the revenue
Wow.
that those projects generated. And you get enough data into that system and you start to see trends, right? There's three
Mhm,
guys who are always at the top. They're always just top performers in the field, right?
mhm.
And then the inverse is true too. When you start measuring, you know, net promoter scores or those types of things on the customer service side, there always tends to be individuals who show up at the top of that list. And so
Sure.
having that visualization a lot of the times either confirms our intuition or more often, like there's so much happening in our business. A lot of the times we don't know where the problems are. It's like,
Mm,
where are the snakes in the grass, right? And the KPIs are like, hey, yo, there's a snake.
mhm,
Look out.
mhm.
But if all you have is a dashboard with metrics, all you know is where all the snakes are in the field. Doesn't give you any insight on how to deal with them. Do you need to kill them? Do you need to relocate them? Right? Like you don't know what to do from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Which you kind of answered my next question of, how KPIs can indicate that a business, as our title says, sucks. Do you want to
Mm-hmm.
elaborate any more on that?
I would just say that the when a KPI isn't trending in the right direction, as opposed to this emotional, visceral response of failure,
Mm-hmm.
I always encourage people to lean into their curiosity, right? Like curiosity tends to be an antidote to fear, right? If you're afraid of something, challenge yourself to be curious about it. And you usually
Mm-hmm.
find creative solutions and you're no longer afraid.
Hmm. I love that. That's like a drop the mic moment right there. Boom.
Hang out with me, they happen. I don't know.
Oh goodness. Um, so can you give us a specific example as you talk about a KPI and indications that a business, could quote unquote suck? Um, what's an example of that? Like
So,
day in, day out, real
yeah,
life.
everybody likes to demonize the TPAs, right? And I
Mhm.
like, don't get me wrong. If like, it's a street fight and they keep TPAs getting the crap beat out of them, I'm probably jumping in and taking a few swings myself. But I think I always encourage restorers to look at what TPAs did for us, right? We were not focused on how fast we were getting jobs done, right? And there's a
Right.
direct correlation between how fast we produce work and how satisfied our customers are.
Mm-hmm.
The faster we get it done, usually the happier there are, the fewer problems there are, et cetera, et cetera. So looking at a KPI like estimate lag, how long is it taking from the time we inspect a property to the time that we deliver an estimate?
Mm-hmm.
There's a number of different business systems that can affect or influence that KPI in addition to all the human components that come into it. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like as restoration business owners, when we've had failing KPIs, we try and leverage people based solutions, right? So estimate lag is trending in the wrong direction. Steve is the guy who writes all my estimates. I go to Steve and I go, Steve, what the hell? It's taking you too long to get this done. Do better. And then I walk out. And Steve either
Right.
goes, frick, man, he's right. I will work harder. And then he works harder. Or he goes, frick that guy. And then it gets worse.
Right.
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 What we try and focus on at Pivot, which it has profound impact, is like the people component's a people component, right? I'm not trying to be ignorant of that. But the
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I do know works universally is if we improve the underlying business systems that support
Mm-hmm.
driving that KPI, then we build a better mousetrap that is agnostic of the individual. Meaning,
Mm-hmm.
if that person's great, and we give them strong systems, they will improve.
Mm-hmm.
If that person is the wrong person and we build better systems, we have better systems for the next person we need to hire, right?
Right.
So, regardless
Right.
of the outcome of the human component, if we're constantly focused and driving and improving our systems, we build better businesses that become more
Mm-hmm.
resilient to the changes in our world.
And we know that there's a lot of them.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, how then do you go about connecting a failing KPI to improving business systems, and how does that then directly, impact the profitability?
Sure.
Because I know we talked about the people problem, but obviously, whether it's the right person or the wrong person in the role, building a system that can, either help the right person elevate what they're doing or help set up a foundation for the next who is the right person, right?
Yes.
How does that then connect to the company's profitability?
So, you have to think about what systems actually influence that KPI to begin with. And we've done a lot of sophisticated mapping here at Pivot to be like, okay, for this KPI, here's 5 different systems that could directly or indirectly impact driving this KPI. So using
Mm-hmm.
estimate lag as an example, you can look at your scoping and estimating process, right? If that
Mm-hmm.
estimator's not getting good content from your folks in the field to author estimates, then they're going to struggle to get estimates out on time because they're waiting for Sally, the field technician, to call them back and be like, "Oh, yeah, no, sorry, I didn't write it down. There actually was 4 air movers on that job." It could be training and development for that individual, right? Like looking at your training and development programs, if that individual isn't sufficiently skilled in how to author an Xactimate or CoreLogic estimate, then there could be a skills gap, and they're constantly fighting uphill on that skills gap. And then kind of, the people side of this, right? Are they properly motivated? Do they understand the core values and mission of the organization? And are they aligned with that? Are we having regular performance reviews with them? Like sometimes people don't know they're doing a bad job. And
Sure.
because we tend to be these happy, hippie, holistic business owners, we're reluctant to go tell them the bad news.
Mm-hmm.
And so looking at our review process, from an HR perspective, can have a direct impact on some of these deliverables that we're measuring, these KPIs that we're measuring.
So, I mean, realistically, then improving business systems goes so much further beyond profitability, which seems like a no-brainer. But I think especially as business owners, it's really easy to let that be the primary focus. Who doesn't want more profit? So it is the first place that we look, but truly it goes so much further beyond that. You mentioned that we're talking about skill building, we're talking about people building, which ultimately does translate into the holistic organization to increase profitability.
Happy people who have more skills drive more profits.
Mm.
And chances are we can afford to pay them more, which
Mm-hmm.
means that they're more happy and more willing to go acquire more skills and make us more money, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's this holistic ecosystem. And then if they're not alone in analyzing process, right? If process is done and the development of business systems is done in a collaborative fashion, everybody wants to be a part of a team, right? Nothing
Mm-hmm.
sucks worse than sitting here all alone and not having any help and not having any expertise, right? Imagine trying to run a business without somebody who has a financial background and financial skills, right? Like,
Right.
whoa, like I need the payroll clerk. I don't survive without the payroll clerk. And so I make sure I take care of the payroll clerk because I know that is not something I can do myself. Our employees are the same way, right? They're intrinsically wired a certain way, and they need all of these systems around them to support them so they can find success.
Mm. Can you share a real life example or case study where a restoration business transformed its performance and profitability by addressing a failing KPI and then improving their business systems?
Sure. So we had a business that was, had set a very aggressive target to drive more leads directly from plumbers in their market. Decent, BD team, right? There wasn't any bad actors on the BD team. And they're sitting there going, okay, our BD team's out there. They're hitting their measurables, right? We don't have an accountability issue. We're setting goals. And, like our goal setting and accountability process for our BD team intact, working. They're doing what we're asking them to do. And what we ended up doing was going through and saying, okay, here's the systems that could potentially drive these leads. And through a series of asking questions, we landed on, hey, we just asked the question, do you have a target marketing plan? Like, have you gone through and thought about the best ways to go interact with plumbers in your market? And the answer was no. We have not taken the time to strategically think about how to go to market and get work from plumbers. And so we sat down and walked them through the target marketing plan process here at Pivot and identified all the, demographic, psychographic information about plumbers in their market. We talked about, what is the value proposition we bring to plumbers in the market that nobody else does, right? It's very easy to show up and just be like, hey, yeah, we do it. What are you doing in your market that nobody else is doing? And you lean into that and you leverage that. And then you use that to solve the problems that whoever you're trying to solicit business is having, right? So you value engineer solutions for them. And then once you do that, you start to outline tactics and strategy. Like, what are the activities we're going to go do to drive our value proposition forward in the market to increase our plumber leads, right? And so whole process to sit down and create a target marketing plan around that vertical took an hour on an initial call. It went through a few revisions. And so call it 2.5 hours in, right? In a collaborative approach, they have this very robust target marketing plan. They have brand new activities to measure their BD team against on the goal setting and accountability side. And they just implement this plan. Plumber leads went from almost a ground floor, like they were getting little onesie twosies a week, to 20 a week within 90 days.
Wow, that's incredible.
And it's all because they found a sweet spot in articulating their value proposition in their
Mhm.
marketplace and drove activities around it. And so target marketing plans as a business system is an area we spend a lot of time talking about at Pivot,
Mhm.
because most people just go to the market and blitz it. And when they get lucky, they double down on where they got lucky, right?
Right.
But stepping back and actually developing strategy around that can make you way more
Mhm.
effective.
Absolutely. I love that in that you brought to light, the aspect of targeted marketing in the sense of, okay, what is the problem that we're looking to solve and how does
Mhm.
my unique value proposition as a business solve that? I
Yeah.
mean, that's like marketing 101. But so many people forget that step. Like we're not
Mhm.
just, let's talk to restoration. We're not just coming into your house to remove the 6 inches of water that you might be standing in your basement. There's a lot more to that, and
Mhm.
we have a lot of, I've been honored that on these podcasts that I've hosted with others, we get to dive into those conversations. So I love that, like, you really brought it full circle into that,
Yeah.
the bigger picture. What's the problem? What's the solution that sets us apart that we could get to provide?
Mhm. And no matter how big, small your company is, you found success somewhere. You're doing
Mhm,
something different, right? And it's just
mhm,
leaning into that and asking the question, okay, based on this vertical, right? This group of
mhm,
people, what is their problem and how do I solve it? And a lot of the
mhm,
times, like everybody always wants to create like unique solutions and different things to solve the problems for these target markets. And I always
mhm.
challenge folks, you're probably already doing something. Like,
Right.
don't try and change your business process to match that target market. Find out where your unique value proposition is for that market
Mhm,
and lean
mhm.
into it. And once you start going deeper
Absolutely.
and deeper and deeper with a given vertical, you start finding more and more creative solutions, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you just spoke to it a little bit, finding a direct and unique value proposition, but are there any other specific strategies or best practices that you recommend for restoration business owners or managers to effectively use those KPIs and improve business systems?
We focus a lot on meeting rhythms,
Okay.
because if you have data and you're not presenting the data and engaging in dialogue about the data, then it's like just in a business owner looking at KPIs in a back closet, seeing the
Mhm.
business swirl down the drain and doing nothing about it.
Right.
Those meeting rhythms and making sure that you have targeted meetings, right? Nobody wants to show up to a 2 hour meeting and get bored. So making sure that your meetings are effective, they have the right frequency, really
Mhm.
helps bring the data alive.
Mhm.
And then, one of the questions I always ask when we're talking about individuals and their performance is, do they know whether or not they've had a good day? Like, can they self
Mm.
evaluate on the way out the door and say, look, I had a great day because I took care of 4 homes today. Like, I went and sucked
Mhm.
water out of 4 homes. Or I know I had a good day because I processed all of our AP and that's my job on Tuesday, right? Like, giving
Right.
people those metrics to evaluate their own performance on a daily basis is super important. And then when you
Mhm.
layer it into a meeting structure, they walk in the door and they're like, I freaking slayed Tuesday because I
Right.
got all my AP done. And
Right.
that inertia is really what carries a business forward and makes it a great place to work.
Two things. As you're talking about the meeting, the first thing that came to my mind, have you seen those like coffee mugs that are very popular right now that say, like, just survived another meeting that could have been an email?
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
kind of feel like I want to get you one.
I, and so like, everybody gives Elon Musk grief over this, but there's that rule in Tesla where, like, if you're not taking from the meeting or contributing to the meeting, you don't have to say anything. You can just get up and leave. And I
Right.
think, like, well, that's like a sledgehammer style solution to the problem of crappy meetings.
Right.
Like, take responsibility for your meetings and your meeting rhythms within
Mhm.
your business and make sure that nobody wants to walk out or look at them. And if
Absolutely.
they're getting bored and it's not relevant to them, right?
Mhm.
Because a lot of the times we'll have these big meetings, we'll have 10, 12 people in the room, but there's one hot topic that is really only relevant to 3 people in the room. Save that
Right.
one for last, right? Give everybody their time back. Say, hey, look, you three, can you hang back? I need to cover this issue with you. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
relative to anybody else in the room. Just
Mm-hmm.
be good stewards of people's time.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that I had to mention, at the beginning of my career, I was recommended to read uh, Seven Signs of a Miserable Job or something like that, right? Have you read that?
I have not.
Listen to it. Okay. It's pretty basic.
Yeah.
But I love that what you talked about was really like real life application of this like business fable that speaks to KPIs going beyond just the person who has something specific to measure, right? It's easy
Mhm.
to say, my job today was to go drain 4 houses of water, like to get the water
Mhm.
out. Cool, did that. But for the person whose job it is to do, you know, AP on Tuesdays,
Mhm.
that's still a KPI that they can measure too. And I love that you like brought a really like practical example of that. So thank
Yeah.
you for that.
Of course.
Um, okay, so I know we're getting close to running out of time. I just have a couple kind of final questions that I want to run past you.
Sure.
So, could you provide some advice or guidance for restoration business professionals who want to start leveraging their KPIs to drive improvements?
Yeah. Stop and ask the question, are we measuring the right thing?
Hmm.
It's very common in, like if you're putting together your meeting rhythms, you drive a dashboard initially, and whatever KPIs are on that dashboard, and this is my personal perspective, like those
Okay.
should change, right? You should
Mhm.
have if you've got 8 KPIs on a dashboard, 4 of them are probably evergreen, right? Like revenue's an evergreen KPI. You always need to
Mhm.
watch it. Leads, right? Like you always need to watch your leads. These are indicators that the business is healthy and doing what it needs to be doing. But
Right.
don't be afraid to switch up a few of the KPIs, particularly the ones that are just always green. If it's always green, you're not measuring the right stuff. If you're always achieving
Mm.
your targets, either your target's wrong or you're measuring the wrong KPI. That's not where the issue
Mm.
is in your business. And so, but the inverse is also true, right? Don't make weekly changes, because then you don't have consistency and nobody learns and becomes accountable to the data and everything like that. So there's this, you kind of need to tiptoe through it. Like the relationship between revenue and profitability is always a good one to talk about.
Right.
Revenue is an easy thing to measure. It's something that people generally understand. Profitability tends to be a little bit harder. It requires a
Mhm.
higher level of education. And so,
Mhm.
starting with measuring revenue and getting people used to just being accountable to producing a given amount of revenue every day is a
Mhm.
win in and of itself. But once you achieve that and everybody's like, yeah, we know we got to go do X every day, shake it up. Start measuring on profitability, right?
Mhm.
Pull revenue from the scorecard, put profitability on the scorecard, and then you can help drive them down, like get their knowledge smarter on the bottom side of the P&L. So then that way they understand, like, hey, whether I go get gas from Costco where it's 10 cents a gallon cheaper, or stop at, 76 gas station or whatever where it's 10 cents more, like I can actually see the change that makes in the profitability.
Right.
I have
Right.
control, because what our employees and what people want in life is just this sense of agency, right? We want
Mhm.
the opposite of despair, right? Despair is what kills us all, right? That's what everybody quits a job for. I feel like I can't do anything good anymore, so I'm out.
Mhm.
I feel like I'm not appreciated and respected. I have no agency. And so if you can give people agency, a lot of the times they will start to take control of the things that are plaguing your brain as a business owner.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for being here today. As we wrap up, I know you're a deep thinker. You've dropped some really good truth bombs here today, so that's pretty evident. What is one thing that you cannot let go of today relative to restoration or not? This
I
is a
run down
dangerous
some weird.
question.
I love the question because people can't stop thinking about certain things, I feel like.
It's
And if
true.
you ask, like I ask this question, my wife will be sitting there on the couch and I'll be like, hey, what are you thinking about? Like,
Yeah.
what are you wrestling with? What are you having a heart? Or what are you just like blown away? right? Like, I can't
Right.
believe that freaking happened. That was
Right.
nuts. Um, so as most people know, we had, the largest wildfire event ever in United States history
Yes.
about 4 months ago. It's almost, yeah, a little over 4 months. And so one of the things that I've been doing, I've allocated a section of my time every single week to go and assist my community. And
Mm.
sometimes that is in, hey, I'm going to go meet with Susie homeowner because she has a hard time understanding her policy. Other times that's meeting with a nonprofit group and connecting them with supplies and equipment that have been generously donated by the RIA. Like it takes shape and form in weird and interesting ways.
Mm.
I had a conversation with a business owner, and he owned 7 retail stores on Front Street, and they're all gone. Right?
Wow.
Typical souvenir shop kind of stuff. Nothing,
Sure.
nothing. Like, but it was a business he was proud of, and he employed a
Hmm.
lot of people. And so him being the entrepreneur that he is, he decides to change position, and it's like, what can I do with my staff right now that makes a difference in my community and provides income, right? Because we
Hmm.
understand that as an employer, we have a responsibility to try and take care of these people because they've been loyal
Hmm.
to us with their time. We have to reciprocate. And so our paths connected through a mutual friend, and he's like, look, he's like, we've done $150,000 worth of work already, and we're learning by Braille, right? Like, we don't know what the hell we're doing. We're retail guys. Can you come talk to me? And I'm like, absolutely, man. Let me come sit down. We'll run through it, and just like fundamentals of stuff, right? Like HEPA sandwich method, all these things that are, technical things that we take for granted. He's like, oh my God, like, yeah. And I appreciated his perspective on it. The one thing that he said that I can't stop thinking about and resonates in my brain is um, he was like, look, I feel like for the first time, the employees that work for us, they have a sense of purpose. There's
Mm.
such a difference between selling shirts out of a souvenir shop on Front Street and cleaning somebody's house and putting them back in their home, right? Like, they get to go home
Yeah.
as a result of the work that we do. And he's like, and I like, as traumatic and challenging as this event has been, our employees have never been happier. They have
Mm.
such a great sense of purpose. And quite often, like, our industry's plagued with all this weird stuff, right? And these
Right.
arguments and the debate. Like, I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't debate and we shouldn't fight, because that's ultimately the innovation that drives us forward.
Right.
But I think as an industry, we need to focus a little more on what we have.
Hmm.
Like, all of us here, we can show up to work and we can make a difference every day. And
Hmm.
not everybody has that opportunity sitting in front of them. And we should approach that with a level of gratitude and humility. Like, we should be happy that we get to show up every day and work hard and make a difference for people. And
Absolutely.
that was such a welcomed perspective for me, because I felt, I've spent a lot of time feeling powerless recently. Like, here's this
Mm.
community of people that I love, and I feel like I can't really, like, it's so big, I can't possibly make a difference. Um, but stepping back and taking inventory of what's important and what I actually have, I'm like, I'm so thankful that
Mm.
I have done this for the number of years I have the skills that I have, and I get to go do something awesome to help people. Like,
Mm.
that's wonderful.
I love that perspective. It's so easy to lose sight of that. But, you know, again, I know I said at the beginning, would the 18-year-old you ever have thought that you'd be here as an industry expert having this conversation? Would the 18-year-old you ever have thought that all the things that you learned in that time could eventually benefit your community by you being able to share that knowledge and really facilitate how, driving someone to help? That's
Mm-hmm.
incredible.
No, no freaking way. Like, I was a Midwest guy. I was good. Like, I was going to go work in the plant at Ford and have a cottage up north with like some ATVs and snowmobiles, right? Like, come on, that dream. That
Every
was the dream.
Midwesterner's dream.
Yeah.
Oh.
But, you grow and you get smarter, and your sense of values change, and what's
Mhm.
important to you changes. And um, And one of the things that I've been reflecting on recently is this concept of the eulogy test, right? Like, is what I'm doing today so important somebody's going to stand up and talk about it at my funeral? And if the answer is no,
Mm,
then I really probably shouldn't do it. Like,
yeah,
I need to be a good steward of my time and say no to the things that don't align with that vision.
absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Thank you so much for joining today. Thank you so much for sharing. Just for any of our listeners, if they're interested in learning more, having some more conversation with you, how can they get in touch with you?
They can visit us on the World Wide Web, right? www.pivotmybiz.com. And there they can get connected with, myself, John, Paul, any one of the members of our team. I think we just added the functionality where I think you can just show up on the website and click a button and land in my calendar on Calendly, which I love. I absolutely love. You
No
don't piss me
kidding.
off by sliding into my calendar. You make me happy. I like to tell a good story. So that's where you can find us, and we love what we do, and we're excited to be able to do it for people in the restoration industry.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate so much of everything that you've shared today. I know I have some huge takeaways of just daily reminders. Is what I'm doing today benefiting someone else? Am I helping to reach our business's KPIs? And then just
Mm-hmm.
taking it into the personal aspect of, am I helping someone else? How is what
Yeah,
I'm doing making a difference? Well, for all of our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another segment of our digital dialogue podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Stichter, and I am honored to host this webinar and lots of other conversations just like this one with industry experts on a regular basis. You can follow Virtual Vision on all of our social platforms to stay up to date on future podcasts and webinars, or you can visit www.virtualvision.com/events for more information. Anthony, is there anything final that you would like to share with us today?
I'm grateful for you and the podcast, and just the opportunity to sit down and talk story today. Um,
Yeah,
these are the things that help me keep my cup full. So I appreciate you creating the opportunity.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Anthony.
Thank you.